Burn after reading. Newly unclassified documents that were headed for the incinerator suggest Hillary Clinton personally okayed a Russian smear campaign against Donald Trump in 2016. Plus, the devil is in the details. An elementary school teacher is arrested after a 5-day manhunt for the grisly stabbing murders in Arkansas's Devil's Den State Park. And what killed Hulk Hogan? Surprising new information about Hulk's health struggles in the years leading up to his untimely death. Those stories and more today, August 1st. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. Happy Tariff Day to all who celebrate. Countries around the world were clamoring to get on the horn with the White House ahead of today's deadline to ink a trade deal. Any that weren't successful could expect a letter before midnight clarifying the tariff rate that goes into effect for their specific country, some of those rates as high as 50%. The president is using a 1977 economic powers law to impose these tariffs. And as you might expect, there are plenty of legal challenges to his use of it. On Thursday, an 11-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit peppered administration lawyers with questions as they decide whether or not to uphold a lower court decision that froze the implementation of the tariffs. I know that sounded complicated. I'm confused, and I was the one who said it. In short, what this means is that even though today is the deadline, legal challenges could halt Trump from enacting his tariffs. So the deadline, it's not exactly the end of the story. As for the deals themselves, so far agreements have been made with major U.S. trading partners like the UK, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. But here's a bit of a lightning round of the status of key partners that don't have a deal. Let's start with China. Their deadline was previously extended to August 12th after agreeing to a deal framework. And things, they seem to be moving along, with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying Thursday, quote, "I believe we have the makings of a deal." Mexico. President Trump extended the current trade deal between the United States and Mexico for another 90 days while they continue to negotiate something more permanent. Canada, no deal yet. And no deal in sight. The president, not pleased. Trump even threatened to increase his fentanyl retribution tariff from 25% to 35% today. Here he is on Thursday addressing the situation with Canada, our largest single trading partner.
Well, they have to pay a fair rate. That's all. It's very simple. They have been charging very, very high tariffs to our farmers, some over 200%. And they've been treating our farmers very badly. They've been treating our country very badly for years. And look, we like Canada. I love Canada. I have so many friends in Canada. But they've been very poorly led.
Moving on to Devil's Den. That's the eerie name of a picturesque state park in Arkansas where a madman slaughtered 2 parents in front of their children last weekend. After a days-long manhunt, police finally made an arrest, an elementary school teacher. 28-year-old James Andrew McGann is currently sitting behind bars accused of the grisly stabbing deaths of Clinton and Kristen Brink. McGann, who has early childhood education teaching certificates in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas, has a history of bouncing from school to school to school after being accused of inappropriate behavior towards students. You have to take a look at this guy. We have photos of him on the New York Post website. He doesn't look like he should be in the same zip code as little kids, let alone teaching them addition and subtraction. Now, this story is disturbing on many levels, but the apparent randomness might be the worst part. The Brinks were hiking in Devil's Den State Park with their 7- and 9-year-old daughters when a man believed to be McGann attacked them out of nowhere on a remote trail. Police don't think the perpetrator had any connection to the victims. Now, Clinton tussled with the attacker first, and Kristen, well, she ran to get their girls out of harm's way, but she came back to help her husband and then unfortunately met the same fate. Thankfully, their daughters were able to flee to safety and report the stabbing. Now, authorities are still digging into McGann's background and looking for a possible motive. He was set to begin teaching in this new school year next week. Instead, he's facing 2 counts of capital murder. Now over to the Unfriendly Skies. Delta Airlines, who are you hiring? A Delta employee is being accused of swiping a child's Peppa Pig iPad after it was left on a plane in New York. Now, scooping up items before they hit the lost and found, not really a good look, but hardly worth raising major alarm bells. Alas, it gets so much worse. The male Delta worker accused of stealing it then snapped explicit videos of himself while wearing his company ID. This is according to the lawsuit filed by the Peppa Pig iPad owners. The family had reported it to Delta's Lost and Found a day after it was left behind, and the Find My app confirmed it was in Jamaica, Queens. That's near JFK Airport. Soon after, photos from the Peppa Pad started syncing to the dad's iCloud account. They were innocuous at first, selfies of a man wearing a Delta uniform and a badge. But about a month later, the content got decidedly less Peppa and more pig. Pornographic videos of the man, again wearing a Delta uniform and badge, were synced to the account. And it wasn't just fun with photos. The lawsuit alleges the employee also created his own profile on the family's iTunes account and hacked into their Amazon too. Now, it has not been a good week for Delta. News of this lawsuit comes just days after a Delta pilot was dragged off the plane after landing in San Francisco and charged with child sex crimes. It might be time, to overhaul some hiring practices at Delta. Now to our big story, Clinton versus Trump. Yes, we are going back to 2016. Newly unearthed documents shed light on Hillary Clinton's failed presidential campaign and a plan to, quote, smear Donald Trump with claims of Russian collusion. The former First Lady and Secretary of State reportedly signed off on a plan hatched by one of her senior advisors, Julianne Smith. These declassified documents include memos and emails obtained by the Obama administration, and in one of them, a Democratic operative writes of Clinton, quote, HRC approved Julia's idea about Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections. That should distract people from her own missing email. Now, the docs are being referred to as the Durham Annex after the special counsel who gathered the evidence, John Durham, and declassified at the request of Senator Chuck Grassley. Grassley's decision to make them publicly available was done in part because he claims, quote, the Obama FBI failed to adequately review and investigate intelligence reports showing the Clinton campaign may have been ginning up the fake Trump-Russia narrative for Clinton's political gain. The Post's D.C. bureau chief, Josh Christensen, has been digging into this story, and he joins me now. So, Josh, I mentioned that the files were obtained during the Russian meddling investigation, but why are we just learning about them now?
Well, these are files, according to sources we spoke with, that had been at the FBI discovered in burn bags, apparently going to be destroyed, but had been recovered by FBI Director Kash Patel and eventually handed over to Senator Chuck Grassley, who, after they were declassified, was permitted to release them on Thursday morning. And so these are files that Grassley has sought for years as part of his ongoing efforts to investigate the Russiagate scandal and all of its kind of associated, inquiries that his leadership has brought forth and sort of brought to light as he's looked into these matters, even when Trump was out of power, but it got accelerated once the second Trump administration got into office.
So can you walk me through the Clinton campaign's plan here? Are there real world examples that it was actually carried out, or was this really just in theory?
There's definitely real world examples that this was carried out. This was something that you see as early as January of 2016 that the ball started rolling on this, but things really got into full force, into full swing around July of 2016. This was something that between communications shown in the files with Clinton campaign members like Julianne Smith, members of George Soros's Open Society Foundations, were discussing this kind of sort of an influence effort to flip the narrative that had been ongoing since early 2015, focused on Clinton's potential corruption scandals related to her tenure at the State Department, involving her use of a private email server to look at highly sensitive classified information, as well as some favoritism she showed towards Clinton Foundation donors when she was still the Secretary of State. And by the time it got to mid-year 2016, you saw communications revealed in this tranche of documents showing that the FBI deputy director and the FBI director were in direct receipt of a lot of these things that the Clinton campaign was trying to peddle regarding Trump-Russia collusion, some of which eventually ended up in a intelligence community assessment in the following year in January. So this was something that took, kind of more than a year to really unfold, but it's clear in the files that were produced by Grassley that this was something that not only the Clinton campaign was discussing, it was something that was discussed at the highest levels of the U.S. government's law enforcement apparatus.
These burn bags seem a little bit more like a time machine. We're back to no collusion and butthurt emails. I cannot believe it feels like 2016 again. Josh Christensen, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Now to an update to a story I brought you last week from our friends at Page Six, the death of Hulk Hogan. Just a week after the world lost the wrestler and pop culture icon, we're learning a bit more about his recent health struggles. A heart attack. That is how Hulk Hogan died. Page Six confirmed the star's cause of death through newly obtained documents and that he had a history of AFib, that's short for atrial fibrillation. It's a condition where the heart beats irregularly and rapidly. The WWE superstar had also quietly battled leukemia, cancer of the blood cells. In his final weeks, sources close to the family told the Daily Mail Hulk was often short of breath, was on oxygen, and had a, quote, weak heart. But Hogan's wife, Sky Daly, refuted those claims, saying, quote, his heart is strong and none of the rumors are true. And finally today, if you're looking for a killer workout, look no further than Los Angeles. If there are two things LA loves, it's a fitness trend and a serial killer. Pilates and the Manson family, SoulCycle and the Night Stalker. See what I mean there? A new gym in Burbank called Killer Fitness combine the two. Allow me to introduce you to the bizarre new exercise class called Slashercise, where you jump and kick and punch against a giant screen that features footage of movie monsters, villains, and crazed killers. The idea was born out of an indie horror film the gym's owners made in 2024. It featured a serial killer, appropriately named Meathead, who terrorized fitness instructors at an LA gym. I guess fans were dying for a real-life experience, so the filmmakers obliged. You see what I did there? Dying. In addition to the Slashercise class, there are others called things like Flexorcism and Terror Twist. You know, I take back what I said at the beginning. If there are two things people from LA love, it's a fitness trend and going to any length to make you watch their indie film. I am not sure if anyone ever looked at Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer and thought, wow, what a bod, but to each their own, I suppose. Really makes you rethink saying I'd rather die than go to the gym. But if you need an excuse to skip a workout, get back and read the New York Post in print or online, or catch up on any episodes you might have missed of the New York Postcast. Give us a like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Until next week, I'll miss ya.